Hello YouTube, Myron Golden here, and I'm going to talk to you today about it's easy for you to get rich. Well, what I really mean when I say it's easy for you to get rich, it is easier to create wealth now than it's ever been in human history. So your best chance to create wealth is right now. It's interesting, there's a verse in Luke chapter 16, verse number 8, and it says, he commended the unjust steward because he said, the children of this world are wiser when? In their own generation than the children of light. So I'm going to help you become wiser in your own generation.
Yeah. Here we go. You see, I got where I am because someone reached out a hand. Help me to stand, be an independent man. Because I'm standing on the shoulders of a giant. The shoulders of a giant, y'all. I'm thankful.
When I say it's easier to create wealth right now than it's ever been in human history, I know that's hard for you to believe because it doesn't feel like it. And I know that for most people, when I say that, you want to believe it's true. Yeah, I want to believe that's true, but it doesn't feel like it's easier to create wealth now than it's ever been in human history. In fact, with the stock market going down and the war in the Ukraine, and they shut down the economy because of COVID, and the supply chain's all messed up, to a lot of people, it feels harder than it's ever been in human history. But I submit to you that it's easier now to create wealth than it's ever been in human history. Then Myron, why does it feel so hard? It feels so hard because most people can't make a living or having a hard time making a living in the present because they're trying to make a living in the past. What does that mean? They're trying to make a living in the past. They're attempting to do something that worked for their parents, worked for their grandparents, worked for their great-grandparents, but it doesn't work anymore. I've got some really, really, really good news and some really, really bad news. Here's really, really good news. You don't have to have a college degree to be successful. I've got some really, 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 really bad news. If you have a college degree, and there's nothing wrong with having a college degree, but most people who get a college degree, when they graduate, here's what they find. They find themselves beautifully prepared to make a living in a world that no longer exists. By the time you graduate from college, the stuff you learned in your first year is already obsolete. Why? Because technology changes everything so fast, most people can't keep up. So I tell people, look, here's how it works. You can't, everybody who's ever created wealth, like new wealth, most of the people who did that, they did it because they created wealth in their own generation. They weren't trying to make a living in the past. What do I mean? Well, what I mean by that is I teach this concept called the history and mystery of wealth. And the principle is this: you can't solve the mystery of wealth until you know the history of wealth. So when you uncover the history of wealth, that helps you solve the mystery of wealth. Because for most people, you got to admit, wealth is a mystery. We don't want wealth to be a mystery for you, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back all the way to the Garden of Eden, and we're going to come up to 2022, and we're going to show you where the wealth was in each of those economic eras. Because the people who create new wealth will always do it better and faster if they do it in the economic era in which they live. So, from the beginning of time, that's the beginning of time, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, to the mid-1700s, we'll call that 1750, the economic infrastructure of the world was based on agriculture, and the people who lived back then were in the agricultural age. And in the agricultural age, it had some very, very, very unique characteristics that are not really true in the world anymore. Characteristic number one, in the agricultural age, land equaled wealth. And the people who own the land own the wealth. And if you were born into a family that owned land, you were born wealthy. If you were born into a family that didn't own land, you were born poor. In the agricultural age, if you were born rich, you lived rich your whole life, and unless some other wealthy country came and took over your country and then took all your land, you were rich your whole life. If you were born poor, there was no middle class, and you could expect to be poor your entire lives. But guess what? The rich people owned the land, but they didn't want to work the land, so what would they do? They would make a little space on their property for some poor peasant farmers to live. Those poor peasant farmers would work the land. They would bring them all the wealth of the land. And when they brought the wealth of the land to the lords and the ladies, that's where we get the term landlord from. The landlord was the person who owned the land. To the lords and the ladies, they would give those people, those peasant farmers, enough food to exist and be strong enough to farm the land again the next year. That's the agricultural age. And in the agricultural age, land equal wealth. I'm going to tell you another unique thing about the agricultural age. In the agricultural age, if change happened, it happened so slow that you would not notice any worldwide change in your whole lifetime. You remember the verse in, I think it's in Genesis chapter number 8 or chapter number 9 and verse number 22. It says that as long as the world lasts, day and night, hot and cold, summer and winter, seed time and harvest shall not cease. Well, here's why it took so long to create wealth. Everything was slow in the agricultural age. Why? Because you planted in the spring and you reap the harvest in the fall. You had one harvest season per year. You didn't have 10, you had one. So in order to make more money, in order to have more wealth, you had to have more land to grow more crops in that same amount of time period. So you had the beginning, and then you had plant time, and then you had the gestation period, and then you had harvest time. So everything happened very, very slowly. And people didn't live very long back then. It would work from the time the sun came up to the time the sun came down. They didn't have technology. There were a whole bunch of things they didn't know. People would die young. People would die of all kinds of diseases. And pretty much, if you were born poor, you lived poor and you died poor. If you're born wealthy and nobody came and took over your country, you're born rich and you live rich and you died rich. Well, what happened in the 1700s? In the 1700s, somebody figured out a way to create machines that would make farming the land faster. In the 1700s. And distributed, like you had the railroad in the 1700s to the mid-1900s, to the mid-1950s, we had the new economic era, and that was called the industrial age. And in the industrial age, watch this, machines equaled wealth. And the people who own the machines own the wealth. But in the industrial age, wealth was created much faster, and much bigger wealth was created in the industrial age than in the agricultural age, and was created much faster. Why? Because we had machines that took processes that would take men like months to do, and machines could get it done in a couple of days. So now we've got this machinery that does this thing, and from the mid-1700s to the mid-1900s, machines equaled wealth, and assembly lines were created during that time, and factories were created during that time, and you had tractors and trains and all of these, Smith & Wesson, they came up with this whole concept of specialization. And all of these things happened during the industrial age. Now, in the industrial age, it lasted for a couple hundred years. In the industrial age, what's fascinating about that is a bunch of things were created. The concept of retirement was created in the industrial age. Retirement didn't exist before the industrial age. They created these things called where the people go on strike. What's that called when people go on strike? Unions. They created unions, labor unions in the industrial age. In the industrial age, one day what happened was I'm working in my factory. I'm working down there in the factory. I'm doing a really, really good job. I'm working harder than all the other guys in the factory. My boss comes down. He says, Myron, you're doing such a good job in the factory. Since you're working so hard, and we know we can trust you, if you'll go to school at night and get a degree, you won't have to run this machine anymore. When you graduate, we'll make you a manager, and you can run all the people who run the machine. Guess what I went home and told my children? Hey, kids, here's what you do. You study hard, you go to school, you get good grades, you graduate, you go off to college, you get a management degree, and then you can be successful, and you can skip working in the factory. You can go straight into management. And in the industrial age, that made sense, and that worked then. It worked for my parents. It worked for their parents, but it didn't work for me. It didn't work for most of you. Most of the people, this is sad but true, and we all know people like this. Most people who get a college degree today cannot find a job in the field they got their degree in. And so what do a lot of them end up doing? They end up waiting on tables in high-end restaurants because that's the only way they can make enough money to live and pay off their college loans. Can I get a witness? Where are my people? Where are my people? Y'all know I'm telling the truth, but why? Because they bought into an industrial age idea. I'm going to tell you something else that was really big in the industrial age, this thing called permission. What do you mean permission? Do you realize if I wanted to be an author in the industrial age, my writing would have to be dubbed by a publisher who had the ability to print books. You're a good writer. And if they didn't think I was a good writer, I couldn't get my book printed. In the industrial age, if I thought I could sing, I believe I can fly, I believe I can touch the sky. If I thought I could sing, and the record label didn't think I could sing, they would not give me permission to be a singer, and so now I can't be famous. Why? Because they own the machines to make the records. I'm getting chills right now. You know why? Because we grew up in a permission-based society where somebody else had to dub you as good enough. And unfortunately, we still believe that we need somebody else's approval in order to write a book, in order to sing a song, in order to make a movie. But the reality is, we don't need anybody to dub anything. All we need is to turn on a camera and do our thing and see if our brand, our singing, our acting, our book, our writing, our expertise can garner an audience, a group of fans who love the way I sound. And I've always said, hey, if Neil Diamond can make money as a singer, anybody can. Anyway, I'm proud of Neil Diamond. His voice, I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand, how did that dude with that voice get famous? That's all I was wondering. Anyway, and he did it during the industrial age when you had to get permission. He must have knew somebody who knew somebody's daddy, who knew somebody's uncle, right? But in that age, you had to get permission from somebody who owned the machines in order for you to create wealth. And then if you were fortunate enough to be the Temptations, or to be the Jackson 5, or to be the Osmonds, or to be Earth, Wind, and Fire, or the Commodores, then in the permission-based society, you could be a singer. That was then, this is now. You don't need any of that stuff now. You know what trips me out? What trips me out is shows like American Idol. You're waiting on 4 people to vote on you? Everybody in the audience loves you, and Simon says, oh no, you sound terrible. Who cares what Simon, this ain't Simon Says, baby. They like me. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna skip Simon and whoever. I don't even know who else is on the show. Maybe I got the wrong show. Maybe it's America's Got Talent. I don't even know because I don't watch that stuff. But it's fascinating to me that people are still going on these TV shows looking for somebody else to give them permission to win. Stop looking for somebody to give you permission to win and just go win. Those are all industrial age ideas. But guess what? After the industrial age, well, you know what, I'm gonna leave that there. The industrial age, the next economic era was from the 1950s to 1978, we went into the distribution age. Why? Because of the machines we were creating. The machines were creating so much stuff, we had to find a way to distribute all the stuff we were creating. Isn't it interesting to you? It's interesting to me. Isn't it interesting to you that every economic era in the past created the economic era that replaced it? Oh, snap. And so in the distribution age, outlets equaled wealth. And when outlets equal wealth, the people who own the outlets own the wealth. And guess what was created during the distribution age? Franchising was created in the distribution age. What else? Discount stores, right? Discount stores were created. What else? Malls were created. What else? Infomercials were created. And people created millions and millions of dollars in all of these. Direct sales. Direct sales, MLM, multi-level marketing, all of those things were created in the economic era. And if you were one of the people who saw a trend and you identified an economic era and you caught that wave early, that wave would take you farther than talent. It would take you further than talent. It would take you further than skill. It would take you further than a degree, because you identified an economic era and rode the wave that was there instead of riding the wave that used to be there. This was game changer for me. Most people are having a hard time making a living because they're trying to make a living in the past. A job where you sold your time to the highest bidder, that was a good idea for mom and them, for daddy and them, grandmom and them. That ain't a good idea for me. Okay, what happened in 1978? 1978, this thing was invented called the personal computer. So 1978 to 1994, we went into the technology age. And guess what in the technology age? Tech know-how. Tech hyphen, that should have been an H, but who cares? Know hyphen how equaled wealth. Tech know-how equaled wealth. And people who knew how to create technologies, new technologies, those were people who owned the wealth. And guess what happened? 1978 to 1994, we saw Bill Gates. We saw Steve Jobs. We saw Steve Wozniak. We saw Michael Dell. we saw all these people who knew how to create technologies getting rich, and we called them billionaire babies. And do you remember, some of y'all are old enough to remember, that in the mid-1980s, everybody wanted to go to school to be a computer programmer. I want to learn programming. Y'all remember that? But the problem is, the people who started going to school in the 1980s, because they wanted to be Bill Gates, they got there too late, because Bill Gates started programming computers in 1968. He was getting himself ready before the age even got here. And so, technology, how did we get ushered into, you know who one of the people was who ushered in the technology age? Sam Walton. Sam Walton had all these Walmart stores, and what did he do? He was having a hard time managing inventory, so he recruited some IBM executives and some IBM programmers, some IBM programmers to program software, inventory control software, so every time they sold something at the cash register, it told the inventory people in the back room so they knew exactly when to order the next tube of toothpaste. Every economic era is creating the need for the economic era that replaces it. What happened after that? Well, 1978, 1994, here we go. We're coming into a new era, y'all. 1994 to 2003. What happened? We went into the information age. This is the first age in economic history, world history, where you didn't have to own something to create wealth. It was the people who controlled the flow. They controlled the flow of information. Those were the people who owned the wealth. You can't own information. Who can own the fact that the sky is blue? Nobody. Who can own the fact that grass is green? Nobody. So guess what? You can't own information, but guess what you can do? You can control the flow of information. And if you can gather all of this data and all of this information, and you can control where it flows, and you can start a search engine like Google or Yahoo, so interesting, or InfoSeek, right? Like some of us don't even, and Ask Jeeves and all the rest of those. We could have created so much wealth if we had done it during the time where that was the era that we were in. That was the information age. The information age is gone. What happened in 2003? 2003 to 2008, we went into what I call the techno, I'm going to do it this way. We went into what I call the techno, info, edutainment age. What does that mean? That means people who know how to use technology to create information that would educate people in an entertaining way. Those are the people who own the wealth. And we had people in the techno, info, edutainment age like Russell Simmons. He created a new industry. How did he do that? He had an Apple computer that had GarageBand on it, and he knew how to edit music. And he started making these sounds and selling these sounds to people he knew. And so without any permission from a record label, he created his own record label and became a billionaire in the techno, info, edutainment age. We have people like Jeff Foxworthy. You might be a redneck if. He created cassette tapes of jokes and comedy routines, and he figured out where his ideal client was. They were truck drivers, and he would sell these cassette tapes at truck stops. He became so rich, he was one of the sharks on Shark Tank. The techno, info, edutainment age. You may have heard of this guy. He was homeless, but now he's a billionaire. What was he doing? He was selling videotapes of plays out of the trunk of his car, and now he's a billionaire. Why? Because he created his wealth in the economic era in which he lived. Homeless to billionaire. How did he do it? By tapping into the economic era in which he lived. The children of this world are wiser when? In their own generation than the children of light. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest problems Christians have that are keeping them broke as a joke and ready to choke. You're trying to make a living in the past the way things used to work, and they don't work like that no more. I know this is helping somebody. It ain't just helping me. Well, guess what? 2008 to, I don't know. Now, before we get to 2008, what did y'all notice about all those economic eras? Did you notice from the beginning? This lasted for that lasted for a couple of decades. Okay, this lasted for thousands of years. This lasted for hundreds of years. This lasted for a couple of decades. This lasted for 16 years. This lasted for 9 years. This lasted for 5 years. Every economic era is getting shorter. Until when? Until 2008. What happened in 2008? What came out in 2008 that impacted the world in such a great way that it literally shook the economic landscape? It's the greatest economic era that's ever existed, and the first economic era in world history that's lasted for a longer time than the previous economic era. What did we do what was invented in 2008? I'm going to give you a clue. There was something that was invented. There was something that was invented in 2007. What was invented in 2007? An iPhone. Remember that? 2007. July of 2007, the iPhone came out. Okay, cool. What was invented in 2008? The App Store. The App Store was created in 2008. Now you say, and by the way, even before Apple came up with the App Store, Amazon was already doing this, but Apple has a way of just taking over stuff. How many of you notice that? They have a way of taking over stuff. Well, guess what? When Apple created the App Store, and Amazon and Apple brought us into 2008, they brought us into the partnership age. Now I want you to wrap your mind around this. In the partnership age, people who know how to create and sustain strategic partnerships, those are the people who own the wealth. Say, what does that mean? Well, Amazon and Apple were the first two to set up, and they said, Amazon with its books first, and then its products, Apple with its apps, its books, and its music, said, if you will go out and if you'll create products or apps to put on our store or write books and put them on our shelves, books and ebooks, and if you'll create apps and put them in our app store and magazines and books, we will sell your product to our audience. We will give you 70% and we will keep 30%. This is the first time in world history. Hear me now. This is the first time in world history where a multi-billion, well now multi-trillion dollar corporation said to average people, we don't want you to just come get a job with us anymore. They're telling you in what just watch what they do. Don't listen to watch what they do. Come and partner with us. You create products to put on our shelves. We will market your products to our customers and we'll pay you most of the money. I am telling you, strategic partnerships are the golden, I was going to say the Golden Gate Bridge, but I've never been on the Golden Gate Bridge, so I don't even know if that's a good illustration. So, are the golden ticket. Strategic partnerships are the golden ticket. They are the master key that can open up doors for you that you can't open up by yourself. There's somebody who's good at what you're bad at, and there's somebody who's bad at what you're good at, and when you partner together, y'all become amazing. There's somebody who has an offer, and you have an audience. And when y'all come together, it's amazing. There's somebody who has an audience, and you have an offer, and when y'all come together, it's amazing. We are in the partnership age. You deserve, whether it be through affiliate marketing. I'm just a regular dude, right? So I know this guy. He's built since 2014, he's built $100 million software company. He had another software program that he created, and he wasn't really doing anything with it. So I said, hey, why don't you sell me that, white label to me, something, whatever. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You pay these developers that I have, you pay them $75,000, and you can own 35%, I'll own 35%, and the developers will own 10% apiece, and together we will build this empire. Let's go. Why? Because partnerships, strategic partnerships, are where the wealth of the present and the future are. And what you've got to learn how to do is you've got to learn how to partner with people who have what you need and people who need what you have. So it's easier to create wealth now than it's ever been in human history, as long as you're willing to make money in the economic era that exists instead of trying to make a living in the past. I hope this helps you. If you like this video, click like, subscribe, comment, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next YouTube video. Bye for now.